Fairfax?
Yes, are you Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman, I'd like to take you to the body right now, but please be advised it's pretty gruesome. Are you ready, or do you need a minute?
I apologize, Yes, I'm ready.
All right, come on.
God damn, I wonder who he pissed off.
Mrs. Coleman, is that Mr. Coleman?
Yes. Yes, it is. Who would do this to Bryce?
The murderer was ruthless. Mrs. Coleman, as I told you when I spoke to you on the phone, I would tell you exactly who murdered your husband when you came over. And we know exactly who's responsible for your husband's murder. What we don't know is how they did it. And that's where you come in, Miss Coleman. Mrs. Coleman, you're under arrest for the murder of Mr. Bryce Coleman.
Montgomery police work at its best, huh? So I killed my husband?
Yes, Miss Coleman.
What?
Mrs. Coleman, I will give you this. It was almost the perfect murder. And I must say your acting skills are Oscar-worthy. You're right up there with Sophie. What's Sophie's choice name? Yeah, that's it. You're the Black Meryl Streep, Mrs. Coleman. I mean, you had every detail covered. You answered the phone as if you knew nothing as to why I was calling. You made sure to burn that car and everything in it to a crisp. There'll be no fingerprints found. We're out in the middle of nowhere. No witnesses. Let's see. When a person is so meticulous with the execution of a murder, they oftentimes overlook the obvious. Again, hats off to your performance. You see, you very subtly told me about your husband's disgruntled customer, his best friend's altercation. And just as an added bonus, you made sure at the last minute to mention the shady business partner and the upcoming stock split. That was good. Very good. You were dropping suspects and motives. I went with it. However, as I was talking to you, I had my team follow up right away as soon as you gave me those numbers. I had Officer Erickson and Officer Alec call the business associate. After the officers both told them that Mr. Coleman was dead, I gave my officers both the same specific instructions. One being to have the suspects call my phone if they had any further questions. And the other instruction was to get here as soon as possible. If you notice in my phone, Mrs. Coleman, you'll see the number for your husband's best friend. He's called me 5 times within the last hour. And if you look up above his number, you'll see that Mrs. Green, the business partner, has called 17 times. I have 5 missed calls from Mr. Sherman and 17 missed calls from Mrs. Green. Do you know why she would want to talk to me on the phone instead of just coming right away like we requested? Why, it was the same request I made of you, Mrs. Coleman.
Exactly. I'm here and she's not. And you're arresting me? Obviously she has something to hide, so why don't you get on it?
Oh, I have.
How? You're not even answering their calls. For all you know, they could be trying to tell on each other. She has that scar above her left eye. Guess that term snitches get stitches applies to her, huh?
Oh, Mrs. Coleman, you are good. You are so good. Can you tell us how you did it?
I didn't do anything.
Really? Let's back up a little. Officer Erickson told me that Eddie Sherman lives 6 minutes north of here. Officer Alex said that your husband's business, which is where the office of Mrs. Green is 9 minutes southeast of here. Now, both of them were contacted over an hour ago. Oh, and look at that. Since we've been talking, one more call from Mr. Sherman and 2 more calls from Mrs.
So why
Green.
don't you answer them?
I'll get to that, Mrs. Coleman. Now, would you say you and Mr. Coleman live about 25 minutes west of here?
Give or take, yes.
And it took you about 32 minutes to get here? That's understandable. I mean, you had to find the place.
Yes, I've never been here.
Well, I'm sure you got a smartphone, right? Right? You probably GPS'd it.
Yes, and what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that, ma'am. It's just interesting. Mrs. Coleman, out of curiosity, what smartphone do you have? I mean, you must have the latest, greatest, smartest phone on the market, because my 2-year-old model smartphone is already antiquated. And with the GPS software that came with it, it requires me to put in an address. Does yours not require you to put in an address? I mean, what address did you use, Mrs. Coleman? Because I didn't give you one.
Yes, you did
No,
give me.
ma'am. Nor did we give Mr. Sherman or Mrs. Green an address. That's why they're still calling me. They don't know where to go.
I want my
Now
lawyer.
you want your lawyer. You better get your lawyer.
It's always the spouse.